Hello everyone, hope you're having a great day. Today I wanted to talk about my twig stove. Kind of go over it, the specs, how it works, and just kind of give an overview of what I think of a twig stove versus a conventional stove that uses gas or even one that uses alcohol. Now, this is a slightly different version of a video that I do. I don't usually talk directly to the camera, but I decided, why not also make this more of an introduction of who I am and say hello to everybody out there. So, my actual name is Steven, and I do very much enjoy getting out into the outdoors. Little backstory, from Minnesota originally, but I did grow up for a fair bit of time in Washington State. So I grew up doing a lot of canoeing and camping, and a lot of backpacking too. When I was living in Washington, it was mostly backpacking and just kind of regular camping. But my family they were pretty active in the outdoors stuff. I used to go bow hunting with my father in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where we would backpack in for a week or so and just kind of explore the mountains. And then when we moved back to Minnesota when I was a teenager, that's when I really started getting into camping, canoe camping. So I started doing a lot of trips up into the BWCA. My family is pretty much from the Ely, Minnesota area, which is pretty much the gateway to the Boundary Waters. I even have an aunt and uncle that actually owns an outfitter in Ely for doing trips into said area. So I have spent quite a bit of my life doing a lot of the stuff that I talk about and do now. I just, up until recently, have never really documented it. So just kind of giving you a little backstory on who I am and why I love the outdoors. It's just something that, when I'm out there, it just kind of gives me an inner peace. And I want to give that and share it with my children, which is why I bring them on most of my trips nowadays. So you will pretty much rarely see any video that I do where I'm not doing it with some of my family. I am trying to get them engaged in the outdoors, promote some ecology, things in them, and try to get them kind of in tune with nature, as well as respecting nature, because that is extremely important to me. So we'll get into more of backstory stuff as we go, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I can discuss further, trips and stuff that I did before I started documenting things, if that's something that you're interested in. But for now, let's talk about this. So, as I was stating, I did want the focus of this to be more about my eventual long-term switch from conventional gas stoves. I use a white gas stove, an MSR Whisper Light, to a twig stove. So let's go ahead and go over some of the reasons why I would want to do that. All right, so we got that zeroed out. twig stove and case. Weighs 8 ounces. Not bad. So the one I got came with a case, and it has a Velcro opening, and it's some sort of polymer based waterproof case. So let's go ahead and get this out and show you that. Okay, so these are the main components. These are the sides and back of the stove. As you can see, it's got these slots for interlocking it. It does not fold, it does interlock. And they do alternate them on either side, which makes it quite a bit stronger for holding together when put together. This is obviously the front where you feed most of the twigs through. And this is the base. Now, as you can see, they're starting to get a little warped after some use, but they still come together well. This is a top, which we'll get into later. It's kind of a crosshatch top for putting your cook pot on. Okay, so this is it assembled. You can see how they interlock. Even with a little bit of the warping, it still comes together quite well. This, as we discussed earlier, cross hatches inside it for holding your pot. Now, I've never actually even left this on because the pot that I have is larger than the top opening of the stove, so I don't really have a need for this most of the time. I do carry it. This does not weigh enough, significantly enough, to just remove it for saving weight. .4 ounces. So instead of 8 ounces, it would be 7.6. Maybe in the future I will experiment with not bringing this portion of it with me, since I literally don't really have any use for it most of the time. Now, if I was just cooking out of a cup and it was smaller than the opening, then yeah, this would be useful. And also, it could function as a makeshift grill. So there is that. But I don't really have much use for it. So I will put in the description the make and model of this. But just kind of showing you the sides, the airflow. And just kind of show you how well it stays together once everything is interlocked. It's quite sturdy. Now, given this open bottom area, you do want to be careful where you put this when you start your fire, because you don't want to start a fire on the ground underneath it. So a rock or something like that, or even if you want to carry a small bit of aluminum foil to put underneath it as a reflector, that would work as well. So I'm going to cut to some footage of it in use right here. So as you can see, it works really well. It is a good alternative to having to carry your stove and all the fuel for both saving space and weight. because it literally folds down to that. Weighs half pound, which is about the same, actually it's less than just my Whisperlight stove itself with pump. Then you also have to take into consideration the extra fuel for bulk and weight. So it's significantly less bulk and weight than a traditional gas stove. I have used some alcohol stoves in the past, but I'm not that keen on them. I know some people really like them, but it's not really my cup of tea. Maybe I just need to experiment with them more, I don't know. But for now, I am going to continue experimenting with this particular product and seeing how it works for me. Now, granted, there are areas that I hike in that I would not be able to use this, and you do have to take that into consideration. They're not expensive, but they're not super cheap either. This particular one was between 40 and 50 bucks, and it works really well. I have seen ones that are well over $100, and I've seen ones that are as cheap as, $10, $20. I have not tried one of those cheap ones, so I cannot attest to their durability. This is titanium, which does make it a bit heavier than stainless steel, but hopefully more durable. We'll see. Time will tell. So, would I recommend bringing a twig stove? Yes, I would. And getting back to my earlier point, there are times where you do have to bring a gas or an alternative gas stove that is not a twig stove, because not every place you're going to hike or camp allows fire. And there's sometimes fire bans, which, if you're in an area like that, would render this useless because it's banned. You can't use it. No fire. So do your research before you go, and if you can use one of these, I highly recommend it. Like I said, I'll put a link. I'm not going to put a link in the description of the product itself. This is not a sponsored video of any sort. This is just my thoughts on twig stoves in general, but I will put the name of this particular one in there so you can do your own research on it. So that's my thoughts on twig stoves so far. Everybody, have a grateful day.